Most businesses start looking for tools at the wrong moment. They look for software when things feel messy, when decisions feel slow, when execution feels inconsistent. The assumption is simple. A better tool will create order, but tools do not create structure. They reveal it. If a business is already unclear, a tool adds complexity. If a business is already unstable, a tool amplifies friction. This is why software so often disappoints. Not because it is bad, but because it is introduced too early. A tool only makes sense when a specific problem is already understood. Not vaguely, not emotionally, operationally. What decision is slow? What process breaks under volume? What outcome is inconsistent? Without clear answers, software becomes a substitute for thinking. It creates activity, not improvement. This is also why many teams feel overloaded shortly after adopting new tools. More dashboards, more notifications, more workflows, but no reduction in uncertainty. Tools are not leveraged by default. They become leverage only when they sit on top of stable structure. Structure defines what should happen. Tools help it happen faster, more consistently, with less effort. Without structure, tools create noise. With structure, they remove friction. Understanding this difference is what prevents wasted time, wasted money, and lost focus. And it is the reason most businesses feel surrounded by software, yet unsupported by it. Many businesses assume that tools fail because they chose the wrong one. They switch platforms. They migrate data. They restart configurations. But the real issue is almost always upstream. Tools fail when they are asked to solve problems they were never designed to handle. Software cannot decide priorities. It cannot define what matters. It cannot resolve uncertainty about direction. Those problems belong to structure. When structure is missing, tools are forced to compensate. They become workarounds. They become containers for confusion. They become places where decisions are postponed. This is why teams often feel slower after adopting new tools. More steps are added. More fields must be filled. More rules must be followed. But none of these steps clarify what should happen next. The tool becomes the system instead of supporting one. This inversion is costly. Instead of reducing cognitive load, software increases it. People spend time learning interfaces instead of improving outcomes. They adapt their behavior to the tool instead of adapting the tool to the business. This is the moment where frustration appears. The promise was efficiency. The reality is friction. A tool only makes sense when a process already exists, not a vague process. A repeatable one, something that has a clear starting point, a defined sequence, and an expected result. Only then can software remove effort. It automates what is already understood. It accelerates what already works. It stabilizes what is already defined. Without this foundation, tools multiply decisions instead of simplifying them. Every configuration choice becomes another debate. Every option creates uncertainty. And the business ends up managing software instead of managing outcomes. This is why buying tools too early is not neutral. It consumes attention. It creates dependency. It locks teams into patterns before clarity exists. The cost is not just financial. It is cognitive. And cognitive overload is one of the fastest ways to slow down execution. Another reason tools are introduced too early is the pressure to feel organized. Software gives the impression of progress. Something has been implemented. Something has changed. Something looks more professional. But appearance is not function. Order on a screen, does not mean order in operations. Many businesses mistake visibility for control. They see dashboards, pipelines, automations, and assume structure exists. But structure is not what you see. It is what happens when things go wrong, when volume spikes, when deadlines overlap, when people are unavailable, when priorities conflict. In those moments, tools do exactly what they are told to do, nothing more. If instructions are unclear, results are inconsistent. This is why tools expose weaknesses instead of fixing them. They make gaps visible. They amplify indecision. They formalize confusion. And once confusion is formalized, it becomes harder to remove. Processes adapt to software constraints. Workarounds become standard. Inefficiencies solidify. At that point, the business is no longer choosing tools. It is being shaped by them. This is the hidden risk of early adoption. Instead of designing how work should flow, teams design how to satisfy the tool. Fields are filled because they exist. Steps are followed because they are enforced. Rules are obeyed because the system requires them. But none of this guarantees that the right work is happening. A tool is effective only when it enforces decisions that were already made consciously. What gets done? What gets ignored? What gets escalated? What gets stopped? Without those decisions, automation accelerates randomness. Speed increases. Accuracy does not. This is why mature businesses approach tools differently. They do not ask, "What can this software do?" They ask, "What problem are we repeatedly solving by hand?" Repetition signals readiness. When the same decision appears again and again, when the same step is executed the same way, when the same error needs correction, then a tool can reduce effort without reducing understanding. Until that moment, manual work is not inefficiency. It is exploration. It teaches what matters. It reveals edge cases. It clarifies priorities. Skipping that phase saves time in the short term and cost control in the long term. Tools are most powerful when they arrive late, not early. Late enough that structure exists. Late enough that behavior is stable. Late enough that automation removes effort, not judgment. So the real question is not whether tools are good or bad. The real question is whether the business is ready for them. Readiness is visible. It shows up when work becomes repetitive, when the same decision appears every week, when the same handoff breaks in the same place, when the same follow-up is required to keep quality stable. Repetition creates leverage. If something is not repeatable, it cannot be automated. If it cannot be automated, a tool will not reduce effort. It will only formalize confusion. And this is why the simplest readiness test is this. Can the process be explained clearly without mentioning software? If the answer is no, the tool will not create clarity. It will demand it. A tool makes sense when three conditions exist. First, the problem is specific. Not, we need to be more organized, but this step delays delivery, or this handoff loses information, or this follow-up is missed under volume. Second, the process is stable. It may not be perfect, but it is consistent enough to standardize. Third, the outcome is defined. Everyone knows what done means. Everyone can recognize success and failure. When these conditions are present, software becomes leverage. It reduces manual effort. It shortens response time. It lowers the cost of consistency. When these conditions are missing, software becomes overhead. It increases cognitive load. It increases coordination. It increases the number of decisions required to operate. This is why smart adoption is not about features. It is about timing. Tools should arrive after structure exists. not before. Because structure is what protects focus, and focus is what protects growth. When tools are introduced at the right time, they stop being distractions and start being multipliers. Not multipliers of activity, but multipliers of reliability. That is when tools finally make sense.